And I think they actually have an award if you write a lot of business with them from, it's the John Stockton Dropping Lots of Dimas Award.
Oh, brother.
Jeez.
That was a reach.
I thought it was the Carl Malone Recipient Award.
There you go. Come on, that was a good one.
Hello and welcome to episode 16 of the Life Insurance Academy podcast. I'm your host, Austin Lopeswero, and I'm here with Chris Ball, Zach McElwain, and Roger Short. The LIA podcast takes you into the conversations of top producing life insurance agents so that you can level up your business. For episode notes and resources, visit liapodcast.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Life Insure Acad. We're also excited to offer text notifications for episode releases and resources that will help you in your business. All you have to do is send the letters LIA to the number 82149. That's 82149 for the recipient and a message with the letters LIA. In today's episode, we continue in our series of making the transition from face-to-face sales to selling over the phone. So far, we've discussed some of the process to be successful, and last week's episode on the biggest reason agents fail during this transition. Today, we're answering a question that we've received quite frequently. What are the carriers and products you can sell over the phone? Today, we'll be diving into 4 carriers with more to come on next week's show. But before we get into that, let's first talk about what makes a carrier good for telesales.
Yeah, Austin, I mean, when you're really considering it, it's got to be simple. So simplicity is the best. And that's for us as agents, that's for teams, agencies, but most importantly for the client, because when you're not face-to-face with them, or if that's what you're used to, you don't have the ability to kind of control the conversation or kind of feel the client out and really coach them or help them through the qualification process. So sometimes if you're sitting on the phone and you're not face-to-face with them, you don't want anything that is an extra step to be a barrier in your sales process. You want to make it as simple as you possibly can for the client to answer the phone, go through the process and agree and say yes and get an application started.
I don't know about you guys, but I've had a couple of applications that I've taken where there was a lot of tech-heavy pieces that I wasn't face-to-face with a client, and it felt like I was describing how to solve a Rubik's Cube over the phone, which I never have done.
That's I thought you were going to say like how to operate the Hubble telescope.
I was going to think like how to do surgery, you know?
yeah. It's like that.
Rubik's Cube.
Microsurgery, not regular surgery.
I felt like a dentist pulling teeth. Trying to qualify a client with an application that has so many steps to it, and if the client or the proposed insured doesn't have the ability to be able to walk through it, and they don't have a grandson or somebody in the household that has those capabilities, it can be extremely, extremely frustrating.
Yeah, they get tired of the process, or they become over it before it's done.
Yeah, you're burning up like collateral. You're burning up grace that they extended you to move forward.
I don't even want to say this on here, but it took me 3 hours to get this client of mine to sign this e-app the proper way. 3 hours.
Now we've given agents a very hard time when they're doing face-to-face meetings and they're in there more than an hour and a half, like 2 hours, like it's really pressing, and you were on the phone, not even face-to-face for 3 hours.
Well, it sounds like it wasn't even like the sit was 3 hours. It was just the signature.
Yeah, the sit wasn't all that long. It was normal, but the signature process, you're exactly right. And this was one of the first telesales apps I completed, and I was already too invested because this was a multi-signature process, and we've already did one with ease. So I was already invested. We were already all the way through this at this point, and we were walking through pop-up blockers on their phone. I'm FaceTiming the lady, telling her to put her husband's phone up to the screen. I'm trying to look through it to just tell her what to click.
Some screen inception happening.
Grab a stranger off the street.
I normally have a lot of patience, and I was surprised of how much patience I had, but even more so, I was impressed with my client. I mean, she was a lady in her 70s, and she stuck with me the whole time. I think I called her. We dialed back and forth like 20 times or so.
Jeez.
It was unbelievable. So I do applaud her and her resilience to stay through the claw and get it done. And to this, she's approved and the policy is in force and active. So
Good job, buddy. We're proud of you.
Gold star.
Your grandmother would have always been that patient with you, Zach.
This was definitely not my grandmother. And to be honest, my grandmother probably would not have been that patient with me. But the whole purpose of this, Austin, is to take what I learned from that and transitioning to prevent other people from not having to go through that.
Are there any other kind of qualities on carriers before we dive into individual carriers and their specific characteristics?
Yeah, we do want carriers that are, makes good sense, but are good companies and that pay good death benefits. They have good reputations. And just having a simple process isn't enough. It has to be a reputable company. So Joe's
Did you say a repeatable company or a reputable
reputable.
company? A reputable.
I thought I said reputable, but we can edit that out. But Joe's towing services and underwriting isn't going to cut it. It's got to be a good company, and also we want one that has good communication with quick underwriting responses. So if we can get an immediate decision, whether it's submitting an e-app or if it is doing a telephone interview, that's going to be important for us too.
Another important thing is companies that provide clear guidelines for agents. Like they have good resources available, like agent guides, underwriting guides. Some even offer prescription guides. Those make it really easy. So, because when you're on the phone with a client, like you need to have everything at your fingertips. And if you're using screens, like your screens can get filled up pretty quick, right? The real estate on your screen space. How many people are operating off an iPad trying to do this? A lot, right? So there's a lot of things to consider. So if you got good agent resources, you can have those on hand beside you. They don't necessarily have to be on your screen, but if they're available on screen also, it keeps everything clear and you can keep moving forward in the process without having to reach out to your help team like we have available here. But without having to reach out to them, you can still get an answer done and move forward.
Now, one thing I do want to talk about before we get into the carriers is there are different types of applications or processes for carriers. And we're going to cover what they are for each carrier, but I want to make sure we do an overview of what it means, right, of the different types.
Yeah, so when you look at the different types of applications, the way I break it down is, does the client have to have an email address or not? That's the easiest distinction between that, because you're either going to have a client that is tech savvy or a client that is not tech savvy, the one that can do email signatures and the one that can't. So that's really going to split it down the middle. And I think this episode is going to focus on the ones that do not require internet access or email access, for a better term. But yeah, so you have e-applications, which the whole application is done over an e-app. Meaning you get on the carrier website or the portal or wherever the company has their application at, and you'll fill it out with the client. You have a voice or a phone application where you don't have to get online and type up anything, and you don't have to fill out a paper app. You will completely do everything you need over the phone. And then you also still have that hybrid where some companies you can do voice signatures, but you'll have to do a paper app and still submit that in. So, and there's everything in between there. But the simple way to break this down, Austin, is really an email required or not email required.
Yes, and today we'll be covering the ones that do not require email. So the client does not have to have the technology. Zach, are we going to go in order of importance, Zach's favorite, or how are we doing this?
Yeah, I do want to cover some of these carriers, but they're not in any particular order. I know for our organization, these carriers that we're going to go over today and also next week are really important for us to keep it simple and easy for our agents, and to really make sure that everything is at their fingertips and we can get business in and processed and the clients can get coverage in the way it should be without any hangups or any amendments or anything that's going to delay the process. So these are just some of the must-have carriers that we believe needs to be in your tool bag for telesales 100%.
Yeah, I know here we use the analogy of the tool bag a lot, right? You have to have the right tools in your tool bag, but you also have to know how to use them. And so today we'll be diving into 4 of those. Zach, what's the first one we're going to cover today?
So the first company I want to talk about is Liberty Bankers. Liberty Bankers is a great company because they are so easy. And actually, their final expense product is actually called Simple, which I like that because that means it's going to be smooth for us and it's going to be smooth for the client. Now, within their products, they actually offer 2 level benefits, a preferred and a standard, and they also offer a modified benefit. If you're kind of unfamiliar with what that means, I'll let my man Chris explain.
So their modified benefit actually has a 2-year, the language we use is building benefit. So it's
Actually 3 years.
Oh, thank you. It's they actually have a 3-year building benefit. We call it building benefit. So over that 3 years, it's going to pay back all the premiums plus 10% during that 3-year period. If they were to die of natural causes, if they die of an accident, it would pay the full face amount. So we aren't going to write a lot of modified business with Liberty Bankers. We have some better options typically for 2-year building benefit periods and probably lower cost. So great for preferred and standard, which are level benefits.
Yeah, and really the only difference between the preferred and standard is the price. Somebody would get standard because maybe they have a few more health issues than a fully healthy person. A great feature with this product is you can do up to $30,000 in face amount without being face-to-face. So we know some carriers actually limit you if you're not seeing them face-to-face on how much coverage you can actually qualify them. They offer Social Security billing, which is something that we always teach and recommend, is to make sure that you are setting up that draft date coinciding right with their Social Security, because the statistics on that show that a lot more policy will get placed and the persistency of the policy actually staying on the books is going to be a lot higher as well.
A really cool thing about Liberty, as you mentioned on the front end of this, is they have a completely paperless application. So it is there's nothing to submit whatsoever. Like, you can't do an amendment because there's not going to be one. There's no agent portal that you have to log into the next day to see if everything got processed properly, and then a check to see if there's a requirement or something you missed or a Social Security number that you forgot. Everything is done over the phone by the interviewer. You're calling a third-party group called DIMA, and they process the interview. They get the authorizations for your signature as the agent. They get the authorizations for your client's signatures, for the HIPAA disclosures, their approval to sign the application with just a voice signature. Everything's done over the phone. There's no email needed. They just simply ask you if you've gone over the HIPAA disclosures, and you let them know about that. And they also ask you if you've gone over the accelerated benefit riders that are attached to the level benefits. They have one for chronic illness and terminal illness, where you can receive 80% of the face amount ahead of time if diagnosed as having a terminal illness or a chronic illness as described in the policy outline. So everything is done over the phone. No emails. You just talk it through. The interview will take care of everything else.
And I think they actually have an award if you write a lot of business with them from, it's the John Stockton Dropping Lots of Dimas Award.
Oh, my God.
Brother.
Jeez.
That was a reach.
I thought it was the Carl Malone Recipient Award.
There you go. Come on, that was a good one.
Yeah, a couple things to remember when you're doing that telephone interview. They're going to ask for certain things, so you need to record these on the basically the pre-call worksheet. There's simply a pre-qualification worksheet that you're going to fill out, and you're going to document that information so that you don't get caught flat-footed on the call. You're going to need to know your agent number, your license number in the state that you're writing the business in, all the client information, the banking information, the draft dates that the client wants that set up for, who the beneficiaries are going to be, their doctor's name, where they're located. You're just going to document that on the pre-qualification worksheet. It doesn't need to get submitted. You're just going to have it on hand for the voice signature process so that when you're on the phone, Everything's clean. The client knows what's going to be asked, and you can coach your client ahead of time about what's going to be asked and what to expect. When I say coach, I'm not talking about coaching inappropriately. I'm talking about setting expectations of what's going to be covered in the call so that you can get that knocked out for them pretty efficiently and pretty quickly.
And surprisingly, that form you're talking about there has a really good name to it. It's called the Paperless App Pack. Is literally what it's called. So the cool thing about it, it's the only bit of paper that you will have with Liberty. You don't have to submit it, like you said, but it actually will give you a step-by-step and walk you through and making sure you're having all of this, because that is what is going to be asked on the call, on the phone interview. Roger, did you cover the signature process there?
Simply the voice signature process. They're going to ask your client for approval to proceed. They're also going to ask you as the agent for your agreement to record your signature, your voice approval, saying, yes, I agree, as your signature for the application, as if you were signing a paper document. Those are the words they literally use on that phone call, that we can use your voice authorization as your legal and binding signature as if you were signing a paper document. So that's it for the voice signature process, and from there they complete the underwriting and give you a decision.
Let's talk about that underwriting a little bit. What does that profile for this carrier look like?
Yeah, so with them having a preferred and a standard benefit, you can really use Liberty to cover a ton of health impairments, which makes it also, not only is it a simple application that brand new agents or people new to telesales can't mess up as they're going through it, because they're not missing dates or forgetting to dot their I's and cross their T's. But when you look at the underwriting profile and who they will cover, they are extremely friendly for COPD. So that's if they're on a nebulizer or if they're on 10 different inhalers, it's not going to matter. They would qualify for a level benefit with COPD. They would qualify for a level benefit with chronic hepatitis or hepatitis C or A or any type of hepatitis. Any type of cirrhosis of the liver, any Parkinson's disease, any liver disease, kidney disease, any mental health issues. So they have level benefits, whether they'll be preferred or standard for all of these health impairments, which can really cover a lot, especially in the final expense market.
You still have to be able to answer no to all the questions on the application. So we said they cover COPD, but obviously one of the things associated with COPD is oxygen use. But they ask about that on the application. So if you're using oxygen, you have to answer yes to that, which is obviously a disqualifier for that level benefit. But if you answer no to the questions on the application, you can move through this application with your client, it does open up a lot of underwriting profiles and a lot of health impairments that otherwise would go to a graded or modified plan. With Liberty, you can get them with a level benefit, either standard or preferred. So great carrier for multiple impairments, simple voice application process, no paper. It's just a good company. They had some challenges for the point of reference on this call. They did have some challenges during COVID-19, which is going on right now. They do have some. They used a temporary number. A lot of their call center representatives were working remote, and they were having to figure out how to, direct calls and put people in the hold queue and things like that. So if you have experienced that, they are now back to their main number as of today, just moments before the recording of this podcast.
Update.
They just came in they just came back in and making the announcement that they're back to their main number for their point of sale telephone and to discontinue using the temporary number. So we're hoping that those glitches and those issues of everybody just trying to have to deal with working remotely, we hope that those are solved now for Dyma, and it makes this process streamlined and simple again, as it has been.
Definitely. So you need Liberty in your bag. And one of the biggest issues they've had, like you said, was due to the increased volume. A lot of people realized you can do them non-face-to-face. They're easy. You phone call, don't have to submit anything. Boom, it's a perfect carrier to have for telesales.
Any quick, personal success stories with them, or maybe stories where you learned how their process is?
Yes, wrote some business with them with a couple of clients, and the romantic idea of being able to write a policy quickly over the phone had to learn quickly that you have to prepare them for expectations. Had some hiccups with a client in regards to that, and but got through the application process because of an underwriter who was great.
Was this a client where you prepped them now that you're going to say yes, and then they did opposite of everything?
Yes, yeah. And at the same time, and it wasn't so much that I didn't prepare them, because I did. It was when I prepared them. We got into another conversation right before the call, and all that stuff went out the window, and really should have had them take some notes and be prepared for the call. So
now, Chris,
there's a lesson there.
I'm convinced that issue would have happened no matter what carrier you would have tried to write with.
Right. That he's going to get in other conversations?
Probably. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so the biggest thing new for me when I started writing Liberty was the awkwardness of when I get the decision over the phone and I don't have to scan anything or send anything. Like, I kind of felt like it was incomplete, but it really wasn't. So that was kind of odd. But, they let you know that the policy will be issued in the next 24 to 48 hours. And then you'll have your commission right in your bank right after that, which was amazing. But I wasn't really used to gathering all of that information on a normal phone health interview. And when I say all that information, like literally you have to have the beneficiaries, you have to have the doctor's name, you have to have the bank account information, accounting routing number. You have to have the whole 9 yards already there, ready to be told over the phone, completed on your worksheet, because they will ask that as soon as you open the call. And so normally they don't ask those in typical phone interviews. So that was something that was a little new for me. But after that, it was not a big deal. And honestly, it was refreshing to know that at the very beginning, I have the account and routing number, everything, and it solidified the sale for me.
Yeah, if you're an agent who likes to use the telephone interview to close, which we never recommend because it's a terrible sales process and philosophy, do not use that thing to close. Close the sale, then do the telephone interview. But if you're doing that, this one is going to be awful because you've got to get their bank information up front. And that just makes the situation very awkward. So if you're doing the process properly, you'll have all that information. You need to be prepared for a couple of questions that the interview is going to ask you on the front end of the call with the client on the phone that you covered with them. Number one, have you discussed the disclosures and the HIPAA authorization release? Yes. Have you talked to them about the disclosures for the accelerated benefits? Yes. If you haven't done that, make a note of it now because they're going to ask you about that on the phone. Because the worst thing that can happen is you're saying yes now, then they get the client on the phone and they're going to ask the client the same thing. And your client said, no, I didn't see anything about any accelerated benefits. Now you've got a conflict. So make sure you cover those things. It's a couple things heads up that you need going into the call.
Awesome, guys. And if you need any of the resources or have questions about Liberty, on the show notes page, there'll be a form and you can get a hold of us. We've actually put together basically like a folder or a packet for each of these carriers with all of the care information and the brochures and the health questions. So if you need help with that carrier, let us know and our team be happy to help. Guys,
and that would be a virtual packet, right?
Yeah, exactly. Virtual. Going on the Liberty, the paperless. What did they call it, Zach? The paperless
app pack.
Paperless app pack.
It's literally what it's called.
So very similar. You get that virtual download, and we'd be happy to help you. So awesome, guys. What's the next carrier?
The next carrier is, I consider it's Liberty's twin. Oh. It's a company called Royal Neighbors of America. And the reason I say they're Liberty's twin is because the signature process and the phone process is nearly identical. Now, there are some variations in the product, such as this one is not just called Simple. This one's called Simplified Issue Whole Life. There's a little difference there. They have a level benefit plan and a graded benefit plan. So they don't have that extra immediate coverage of standard. So it's just level or graded. You can have up to $25,000 in face amount for non-face-to-face. They also have the Social Security billing, so you can set that up on their draft date. Another unique feature that Royal Neighbors has is you can push out the initial draft date for 45 days instead of the standard 30 that's with most carriers.
Why would that be useful for an agent or a client?
And I want to say this carefully because you always want to have that initial draft date as close today as you possibly can. Like I'm always going to try to recommend and assume that we're starting it today. If not, on the exact next day they're getting their Social Security billing. But here's a situation, Austin, that might be important. Let's say I have a client that doesn't get their Social Security until the fourth Wednesday of each month. All right. So technically, the fourth Wednesday wouldn't be here yet. But let's say that this month's fourth Wednesday is already accounted for. So they aren't going to be able to start it here in just a little bit. They have to wait to the fourth Wednesday of next month, which changes each month on what day that actually falls. Well, if it's outside of that 30-day window, I'm kind of in a pickle with another carrier. But with Royal Neighbors, I'll know I'll have 45 days that if I'm going to start my initial draft, it doesn't have to be here in a week or two. It can be the fourth Wednesday of the following month to set up the first initial draft date.
Awesome. But like you said, obviously get it close to today, but they do have that flexibility.
Yeah, that's not something I promote when I talk to the clients. Hey, we don't even have to start this for 45 days. That's not something that I want to do, but I know that and to keep that in my back pocket and use it if I needed to.
Yeah, again, not a good closing philosophy or a closing approach. We can softball this thing. You don't have to make any payments for 45 days. I think that's just a terrible way to go in. But yeah, the flexibility
you
to do
won't
it.
keep the placement and persistency there.
Correct. And the true Social Security billing date option. So you can do the second, third, or fourth Wednesday because that Wednesday is going to move for those people, seniors that are on Social Security that are on one of those Wednesday dates. And with a Royal Neighbors like Liberty, you can set it up so that it moves on the second, third, or fourth Wednesday. So that's really important for telesales and final expense products. It just allows you to keep your business that you write.
Yeah. With this, with their app pack is also paperless.
Another paperless app pack.
That's right. That's right. So, but with their sheet they give you, it's actually called a POS agent worksheet. So basically what this is, it looks like a condensed normal application where you basically just take notes on it. So you fill out the name, the address, everything you would need to be prepared for a phone interview on this POS agent worksheet. A great thing
POS stands for point of sale, by the way, not something else that you may be thinking. Okay, point of sale. I had to say it because this is a great company.
Yeah, absolutely. One other aspect of this worksheet that I had to get used to was I wasn't filling out an application, so it was important for me to have the health questions on both of these applications set aside, not depending on the underwriters to just ask those questions, but for me to ask those questions before so I know that they qualify so I'm not wasting everybody's time. So that was different for me, having this point of sale agent worksheet both for Liberty and Royal Neighbors, and then not just assuming that they were going to, if I just asked some general broad questions, it was good enough, and then to go through the underwriting process.
Exactly. And also what's similar with Royal Neighbors is there's no email needed. So once again, if you have a client that I have an email, but I haven't looked at it in 40 years, or I don't know how to log in, or I don't know how
have
to
the
click.
password my spouse does, and they're at the store.
Right. So you won't have to worry about that. No big deal. We'll just get on a three-way call, and it will all be taken care of.
You do need to send them one piece of information, and that's what's called the important information document, which is essentially
so important.
I know. I thought it was funny. Like, you really call it the important information document?
Yes.
Like, isn't all of this stuff important? like everything we're doing. But it is basically their HIPAA disclosures, okay, and their voice signatures. So they just want them to get that. You can take a picture of it and text it to them. Worst comes to worst, you can read it to them and then proceed. So they just want to know that they've seen it, they've gone over it, and they have a copy. So you can text it, tell them it's in their text. If they have an email, great, and they can function that way. But you do have options. That's the only thing you need to send them.
Chris even has a service where he'll read it to them in whatever dialect or accent that you want.
Yeah, or language. It's a
Some
beautiful
companies
thing.
used to do that on the phone on all
Je
of their
m'appelle
telephone interviews.
Christophe. That's French for my name is Chris.
Chris, you should sell your services to Garmin, and you could be a part of GPSs
geez.
everywhere. Can
I
you
just lull
imagine?
people to sleep, dude. There crashes all over the place, just sleepy drivers.
Yeah, this important information document, you will be familiar with it because the very first question when they answer the phone is, have you sent the important information document to your
Yes.
client? And if you say no, they say, okay, hang up, send it to him, and then call us back. Literally.
Yeah, and
You
you,
only
don't
learn
want to
that
wait on
once.
hold again.
Yeah.
Another good thing to say in all of these, by the way, a lot of companies will have a fraud statement, and you just need to let them know that their answers need to be true and accurate. Otherwise, it can be considered fraud. It's okay to say that to all of the telephone sales. So say that to your clients, because then if it's ever asked on these questions, on these health interviews, you've covered that also.
Yep. So during the phone interview, they're going to ask for that important information document first. So you can send that, like Roger said, you can send that over a text message as a picture, so they don't have to get an email or anything like that. So it makes it really simple. They're going to make sure that they're going to ask about your doctor's information. Now, they don't need where he lives and all that. They just want to know his name and a phone number or a town that he lives in. You're going to need to have all the banking information, draft date already together and ready to go on your POS agent worksheet, the beneficiary's name, and then the voice signature process is identical to Liberty Bankers, meaning your voice signature is done over the phone as if they signed it with paper. So it's really neat. Even if you have a client that doesn't have email, or maybe I've actually had a client that can't sign his name. So this worked perfect for him, and he was more than happy. So that voice signature process really helps out here.
All right. What's the underwriting look like for Royal Neighbors?
Well, the underwriting for Royal is very friendly. So they have some big niches that I really love here. The first one being they are diabetic friendly. And what I mean on diabetic friendly is the client can actually have insulin, and that's not going to be an issue. They can have complications with their diabetes, such as neuropathy, retinopathy, or nephropathy. I think I said that right. It's always kind of a tongue twister there. But they can have that and be taking nerve pain medications such as gabapentin, Lyrica, or Neurontin, any of those, and be on insulin, and they get a full level benefit. It's not standard pricing because they don't have a standard product. It's just their level benefit pricing, which is huge for us because where we run into a lot of diabetics, and a lot of diabetics tend to have complications or they're on medication that is treating neuropathy or any of those symptoms. So that is one of the biggest ones that we run into, and to get a level benefit out the door with that is huge. They don't ask about activities of daily living, such as bathing, toileting, eating, dressing, taking medications, or moving without any physical assistance. That one is that we don't run into that too often where that becomes an issue, but that's good to note. They accept cancer beyond 2 years, which is very friendly in the final expense market. A lot of carriers are 4 years, 5 years, or beyond. They don't ask, or it's not an issue at all, for any type of mental illness, such as bipolar, schizophrenia, anxiety, depressions, anything like that. It's not an issue. There's a very unique niche of TIA, which is a transient ischemic attack, also known as a mini stroke. Now, this is where it can be confusing to some people because they do ask about strokes on their application. It has to be 2 years removed, typically just about every other application. So if they've had a stroke within the last 24 months, it's going to be a graded benefit. But if it's deemed as a mini stroke or a TIA, no matter if they had one 3 months ago, it would be considered a level benefit.
Yeah, my mom has had many of these, like more than 10 in the past 5 years, and never a stroke, never diagnosed as a full stroke. And so she would actually qualify for level day one coverage on this plan.
Now, Roger, with that, and that's typically the difference is a stroke, a full-blown stroke, you're going to have some significant side effects to that, right? Where a
Yeah.
TIA, like your mom, did she have any like lasting issues?
She had the immediate issues are almost the same. So like loss of the use of her hands to be able to write her name. Her speech was slurred, things like that. So almost the same symptoms as a stroke, but they only last a day or two, and then everything is coming back to normal. So clearly there's some issues there. But with Royal Neighbors, they, unless you've been diagnosed with a stroke, they're like, we're okay, because it's a part of their underwriting profile, and that they accept it. So it's kind of like this micro niche area for Royal that is quite unique.
Yeah, and it seems to be a lot of clients that I do see is when they have a stroke, it seems to be more times than not a TIA and a mini stroke rather than a full blown stroke. Royal Neighbors is very friendly when it comes to any legal matters, and that's like DUIs or felonies or misdemeanors or charges like that. And then the other one, which can be really helpful in a situation, which is they do not have a height and a weight chart.
No build chart.
That really helps when you have somebody that is really skinny and small, petite person, or somebody that is a little on the heavy side for their height. But other than that, their health is perfect. So why should they be penalized with any other carrier of paying a higher price in a waiting period when their health is perfect? They just, don't fit the build chart.
They're a little too short for their height.
Too short for their height?
Yeah. They're too short for their height. Too short for their weight. Did I say that right?
There it is.
They're a little too short for their weight.
There you go.
A little too short for their weight.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
No, I was saying when you look at that profile, I mean, those are some significant impairments that really step out to really, you can see why we would have this in our toolbox, not only for telesales to be able to do everything over the phone with the ease of writing this business, but also because of the health impairments and the ability it gives us to really put our clients first and give them the best product and benefit that they deserve for their family at the best prices, because the better the qualification, the lower the price.
Yeah, another thing that we missed on Liberty and Royal. So with Liberty Bankers, I just want to go back. Liberty Bankers age ranges from 18 to 80. So that starts out really young. Royal Neighbors at 50 to 85. So all these carriers are going to have different health or age qualifiers. And with Liberty Bankers, I was just recently able to write one with a 47-year-old that I wouldn't have been able to qualify them for with Royal Neighbors. With Royal Neighbors, however, they go past age 80, and you can go all the way up to age 85. Liberty Bankers would have stopped at age 80. So there's some other little niches there on age that we want to be paying attention to that gives us great opportunities. I will say, Zach, that with Royal Neighbors, they do have two other application processes. They do have a great e-application, which they launched last fall. It is super simple, easy to write, but as of the date of this broadcast, that is still requiring a face-to-face interview for the e-app. And they do have a traditional paper application that you can do with the traditional point of sale. You can also take a paper application, turn it in, then the company's going to do the third-party underwriting call without you. Don't recommend that, but these are other ways that Royal Neighbor you can process business. But for the purposes of this call and this today's topic in this episode on telesales, the voice signature is the process that you're going to use that makes this product so great.
Now, Roger, when we had Bruce Brack on with Foresters, he mentioned a word about their organization being a fraternal organization. I know Royal Neighbors is the same. What does that mean for you, the agent, or for the client?
And let me say this, just because they're a fraternity, it doesn't mean there's hazing. They don't do any of that stuff.
I think he said fraternal.
Fraternal.
That's my headphones. I'm sorry.
So Royal Neighbors is a fraternal organization, which means that any amount of monies that they would normally pay in taxes, any other company, they have to put those funds back into member benefits and community services. So they are able to provide a lot of additional services for members. So when you apply for a policy with Royal Neighbors, you become a member of Royal Neighbors, and that signs you up automatically for member benefits. They have a ton of different features, community services, legal services, all kinds of extra little add-ons that it's not a part of the policy. It's a part of you being a member of Royal Neighbors. So it's great that way. They do a lot for community services. It's an organization that was started by women way back in the day, and still has a very large emphasis on empowering women and taking care of women's needs. So it's a great company.
So with that being said, any personal success stories, any wins, any anecdotes from Royal Neighbors of your experience with them?
I got one that's kind of a win. My first ever client I wrote up Royal Neighbors is when we first got contracted with them, and I wanted to use them to kind of see how the process went, and I really was unsure what to expect as far as the phone interview and the company and how the underwriting would view. And because when you're writing a new carrier, sometimes that unknowing makes you a little uneasy. But I wrote a client up who had some diabetic complications, and he got approved full level benefit. And I was really excited because we didn't really have a competitive product like Royal Neighbors before to handle people with these diabetic issues. So that was really exciting for me. Unfortunately, the client passed away 3 months later. He had a heart attack out of nowhere while he was cutting his grass, and he was only in his 50s. And him and his wife, they just retired and were spending all their time together on their little farm. And he was out there cutting grass and had a massive heart attack, and she just saw him slumped over the mower. And this was literally probably almost a year ago now, but this is just 3 months after we wrote the policy and Royal Neighbors had paid out. So I have a great respect for them just because of that happened so soon, and it was my first policy I wrote, and it was diabetic issues that they were dealing with. The client was, and it was really rewarding and relieving to make sure to see that my other client, his wife, had got the benefit in check, and if we didn't have Royal Neighbors, they would have never been able to qualify with a level benefit with anybody else, and much less she wouldn't have that money in her bank right now.
Wow.
I mean, my success story with them is that they're always really quick to answer for the telephone interview. It's pretty streamlined and efficient, and you can get a decision right away. And again, there's no paper. You can't mess it up. For new agents particularly, this is a huge win because we've had companies that have almost wanted to impose extra things that agents needed to do to get applications approved. And for those of you maybe listening to this call, you've tried a bunch of carriers, you probably know who that is. But there are certain ones out there that we steer away from now that we used to do a lot of business with simply because they're not agent friendly. It's very difficult to get. But with Royal Neighbors, it's pretty simple. Great face-to-face e-app, great voice or paperless voice application over the phone. So I highly recommend you get them in your bag.
Awesome. Again, if you want more information on them, if you want the paperless packet that we have, just go to the show notes and request that carrier. We'll have the list of carriers we covered, and you can just check box the ones you want information on, and we can send them over to you.
We also have great cheat sheets on impairments for carriers. I mean, this is it's another tool that we use, and they have a lot of green on their cheat sheet. So you get some of these impairments. If it's green, you go. So there's some other tools that we have available for you. If you're interested, you can reach out.
$19.99 special. Just kidding. All right, Zach, who's next?
The next will be Assurance Solutions with their product from American Memorial Life, which it's been a really unique fit, and you'll kind of see that it's not a 100% phone app like the last two, so you might want to hold on to your seats with this one. They have a paper application that was actually the very first company I've ever started writing, so this was the first company I got to know in and out, and know all the benefits that it can have in really making sure your client is taken care of. So their product actually goes up to $50,000, but not for non-face-to-face. So I'll repeat that. For non-face-to-face, it can only go up to $15,000
Yeah.
on their non-face-to-face product, which is still fine because it's a great benefit that we can have that's really easy for our agents and our clients to do over the phone. They have a level and a modified benefit that is standard with most companies.
Zach, I want to jump in. That level starts at 0, like children. You can qualify from 0 all the way up to age 85. Their modified plan starts at 40, goes to 80, but their level benefit is literally 0 to 85. So it's quite a unique fit there too.
Yeah, you're not going to write a ton of kids in this product, but every now and then you'll have a child or a grandchild that's a teenager that might have minor health problems that will not allow them to qualify for like a Children's Whole Life through Mutual of Omaha or another product like that. So I have written a handful of those for sure in that lower age, and it's just nice to have a tool in your bag that you can use no matter what age you need to.
Yeah, it's also a good little fit if you've got grandparents and they have an adult, child living with them, and maybe a granddaughter, that adult child's child, and they're all living in the same house. Like you can literally write this product with all the family members. They actually feel good about it because they're all with the same company. Like there's that tie-in too. Sometimes that goes a long way.
Exactly. So they actually have a paper application. And Austin, before you get too confused, you're like, what? Telesales paper? What? Yes, they have a paper application, but it's very simple. It's only 5 pages total, and there's only 3 signatures.
Wait.
How
do they do signature over the phone?
You were going to ask that.
Oh, man, that's a great question. So they actually have a voice authorization process. So me as the agent would be sitting at my computer or my workspace, and we'll be going through the application. As we're going through it, instead of doing a e-app, because they don't offer an e-app at this point, I would be filling out a paper application right in front of me, very similar to a Liberty Bankers or a Royal Neighbors point of sale agent worksheet or the paperless app pack. So I'm filling it out as if I'm sitting right in front of the client. And then once we complete the application, we will call a 3-way call to a phone interview. All right. And this would be calling Elite Sales Processing with American Memorial. And so once we get them on a 3-way call, whenever it comes to those signature section, then what we will do is we will write the client's name on that signature line, just print their name. We would write in parentheses, voice authorization, today's date, and we would also write the time of that signature. So it could be, 4:37, it could be 8:15, whatever the time is, and you will be prompted to do that during that phone interview. So with each of the signatures, which there's 3 on this application, you are able to do that as the interviewer tells you to write that on there. Now, after that application is done, after the phone interview is there, you will get a point of sale decision, and then you scan in and turn your application in to either your home office or American Memorial Life, and there's no underwriting at all once it goes in. It's already completely done. The policy gets placed and enforced, and the commission is released.
All right, well, let's talk about the underwriting.
Well, American Memorial has a very unique underwriting because of the way they look at the impairments and the incidences versus the prescriptions. Most carriers, they just look at prescription-based, meaning if they take this medicine or that medicine, it's an automatic graded, or it's an automatic decline, no matter what, no matter if you have to explain it or not. With American Memorial, they are incident-based, so they're more worried about, okay, when did that happen? Why did it happen? Were you in the hospital for that? Did you get it taken care of? Did you have any issues since? And they will make their decision based upon the client's explanation instead of just looking at the medication. So with that being out there, it really opens it up to assist you. It feels like they're actually on my team for once and helping me get this client approved. Now, I have to tell you this, Austin, that doesn't mean that I'm going to take every client that has health issues and try to squeeze them or push them through. I have to do my job as an underwriter in the field or over the phone to make sure my client should be qualified for this plan. So when we look at some of the key points where American Memorial will fit into my bag and your bag as well, one of them is going to be COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary lung disease. Okay. Also chronic bronchitis, emphysema, which is all somewhat related. So they will actually allow you to have a level benefit as long as the client was diagnosed more than 36 months ago. So as long as they're diagnosed more than 3 years ago and they're not on oxygen and they're not on a nebulizer. So the nebulizer is the little machine they plug into the wall, and they have the liquid albuterol and the face mask as treatment medications. So as long as they are not on oxygen and a nebulizer, you can get a level benefit. That's even if they're on 10 or 20 different inhalers, because the way American Memorial views the inhalers, they view them as maintenance medications instead of treatment medications. Some other carriers, even like Royal Neighbors, for example, if they're on inhalers for COPD, they're considering that treatment. So you would answer yes to their question. So any COPD, lung disease, chronic bronchitis, emphysema, any of that diagnosed more than 3 years and they're not on oxygen or nebulizer, level benefit.
Yeah, it's like a preferred rate. It's going to beat out most rates out there.
You're exactly right. So the other competition out there, the other carriers that would even allow you to have a level benefit with COPD is going to be standard rates.
Yeah, like Liberty has a standard rate for COPD, but the American Memorial Assurant product is going to have a better price if that's the only thing that is a proposed or a potential impairment. Because again, if it's over 3 years and they're not taking any nebulizers or oxygen, they can answer no to that question. And then as long as all the other questions are answered no, it's preferred level. So it's a great fit there. We write a lot of that business.
Exactly right. They're also cancer friendly in the sense that they only look back 2 years on cancer. Now, it has to be a different type of cancer, so they can't have a reoccurrence of the same, or it can't metastasize or spread throughout the body. But if they just have one occurrence of cancer, as long as it's more than 2 years, it's not going to be an issue and it will be a level benefit. They don't ask about any legal issues. So once again, like DUIs or any misdemeanors or felonies or anything like that, you'll be able to be fine as qualifying your client there. One that's pretty unique that you don't see very often, and I don't think I've ever had to run into it, but I think, Roger, you have, is pending test results that have not came back yet. They don't ask about any of that is pending or awaiting results for any types of testing for anything. Whereas a lot of carriers ask that question, which they won't give you any coverage until the results are known.
Yeah, sometimes carriers will ask, do you have anything upcoming? Have you had any procedures done that you're waiting for results back that you've not received yet? And if they've had anything done, any type of tests or procedures, you have to answer yes to that. So here, it's not even an issue because it's not asked. So it allows you to keep on moving.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it's the only carrier that I can think off the top of my head that allows you to be able to do that, because they're worried about the actual diagnosis of when something was diagnosed and you start treatment for it.
One of the things I like about this Carriers Act, you mentioned it earlier, is that they're incident-based underwriting. So they're not going to rule out automatically for prescriptions or combinations of prescriptions. You have an opportunity to address those things. So with an incident-based underwriting process, it gives you a lot more latitude and flexibility, especially if you're convinced that your client should be approved level. They may have been taking gabapentin for a back injury for nerve damage, and then subsequently, years later, they were diagnosed as a diabetic. With other carriers, if you start taking that medication and you're a diabetic, they automatically assume it's complications of diabetes or diabetic neuropathy, and they rule you out and they move you to graded. With American Memorial, that can be explained, and they can still qualify for a level benefit. So there's some cool little niches in there.
Yeah, and you may be wondering, like, well, where do you explain this? How do you explain that if you have that? Well, their interview process is pretty unique, because once the interviewer takes the basic information of the client, they actually quickly go through the health questions. They used to read every single one. Now they just ask to make sure that that your client did not answer yes to any of the questions in section 1 or section 2. So that really
Zach,
speeds up the process.
there. Like, they just made this change this past year, and that has been absolutely phenomenal. It's knocked down this interview time from 12 to 14 minutes to about 7 to 8 minutes. I mean, it's cut out almost half of the call. And when they go through and you get to the health question sections, were any of the questions answered yes in section 1 or part A? No. Were any questions answered yes in part B? No. Like, it moves really rapidly. Most other carriers will ask all of the questions to get a confirmation and recording. So when they did that, it was a game changer for speeding this up and efficiency and simplicity.
Yeah, and for you experienced agents out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about when it sounds like the interviewer's a robot and you've heard these same health questions 8 million times.
Especially when you already asked them all and got all the answers already, and now the interviewer's asking all the same questions again. It's like, how many times am I going to be asked this?
You're exactly right. But what makes their phone interview unique is following that, you need to prepare your client, but the interviewer will then start bringing up the prescription history and asking the client, do you remember taking this medication? Have you ever taken this medication? And they will go through each medication that they were prescribed or that pops up on their list. So what's really important here is to have your client, before you do the interview, to write down their medications and also to the right of them why they take them. And if you're really unsure and they're really unsure, well, maybe you need to help them Google the information, figure out what that medication is being used for, and make sure the client knows that, is this why you take this medication? Oh yeah, I had that back surgery, so that's for my back pain. So you can have an explanation. That explanation could be the difference of your client getting approved level versus a modified or a straight decline. So that is actually to help you.
That's
the
huge.
Interviewers in underwriting, they will actually tell you what doctor prescribed it and when it was prescribed and how many refills you had of it to help you trigger a memory or to help explain the story of that medication, which is also huge. Now, I'll tell you what's really unique, Austin, is if your client doesn't get approved what you're applying for, but you are experienced, you've been in the field, you know medications, and you know the client should be approved for this, you can actually send this application to underwriting or refer it to an underwriter. So the underwriter will ask a few more additional questions, and then they will let you know that they will call you back with a decision in 24 hours. So they will further look into this case. And I don't know what, I think, do you have a stat on that, Roger, of how many actually get reversed or the decisions?
Yeah, over 50% of them get approved level benefit, even ones that are referred. So clearly, if you're doing a call and it's just some kind of conflict and the underwriter cannot resolve that conflict through their automated system, through their computers, MIB reports and script check, they will ask, at this time, is you're qualifying for a grade of benefit. However, if you would like to refer to underwriting, we can do that. Would you like to refer to underwriting? And then you say yes. Okay, great. So I'm going to ask your client a few more health questions. Can you put them back on the phone? And then they're going to dial into specifically where they see the conflict. So here's a huge benefit to that. The big benefit is now you're going to find out what's flagging in their MIB or script check. That's kind of like a red flag that will happen with other carriers, but you can never know why. So now you're a part of that conversation and you can find out what they're looking for. Oftentimes the client can then clarify, then they refer it over to underwriting, and within 48 hours you're getting a decision back that 50% of the time is going to go in your favor, especially if you're convinced that this client does in fact, should be approved level benefit.
And on the other side of that 50, they never say your client is just declined or we're not going to offer coverage. They will say, you can get a doctor's note from the doctor on a doctor's letterhead stating the client does not have this condition, which is question 1 or 2 or 7 on the application, and have the doctor sign it. Or they'll say, can you have a doctor's note explaining why they take this prescription medication on a doctor's letterhead and have the doctor sign it, and then they will still overturn it. So it really gives you every opportunity possible. If this client is truly should be eligible to qualify, and there's good explanations, you have every opportunity to get this client approved a level benefit.
Also, another unique thing is during the regular interview process when they're reviewing medications, they will ask what the medication was taken for, as Zach said. What do you take that for? With some carriers, because of the type of medications, it's hard to distinguish dual-purpose meds. And dual-purpose meds are medications that can be prescribed for multiple things, and they may have been designed for one purpose, but they found over time that they actually help with another impairment that us human beings have, right? And so then they start using it. We're now seeing it, the malaria drug, we're now seeing some of that being used in the, assistance with COVID-19. Like that wasn't originally designed for that, but it's actually helping a lot of people. It's not necessarily the cure-all, but it does help. Well, in underwriting, they're looking at the same types of things. For instance, there's a medication called methotrexate. I'm getting into some details now, but methotrexate, which can be used for cancer treatment. That same medication is also used for rheumatoid arthritis, right? So you have an opportunity to explain that, Austin, to the underwriter, because if they say, what am I taking that for? When that flags and you ask your client what medicines and they say methotrexate, you're going to dive in. What do you take that for? Now that's Mr. So-and-so. This is also prescribed for cancer. So they're going to ask you that. You need to let them know you do not have cancer. You've never had cancer and you're taking this for your arthritis. And then the interviewer will clear that up, check the box, move on to the next question. It's really cool. Ropinirole is another one for restless leg syndrome and I think Parkinson's. I think is that the other reason it's used?
That's correct.
And so obviously those two things are related when it comes to nerves and how the body responds with your nervous system. But ropinirole is often prescribed for RLS or restless leg syndrome, which is fine. Other companies, though, if it's prescribed for Parkinson's, are going to move that to graded or declined, depending on the carrier. Again, with American Memorial, you can say, I take that for restless leg, and you can move on. They check the box, you move on. It's great. It's a great carrier. You have flexibility and options that you don't have with others.
Awesome. Well, if you want more information about AML, American Memorial Life, woo, what a tongue twister, or Assurant, again, hit the show notes, check that box, and we'll get that to you. All right. Looks like we only have time for one more carrier this episode. What carrier are we going to cover next?
Well, Austin, I want to give you a carrier that's really unique, that's going to have be able to be sold over the phone. You're able to do an e-app or you're able to do a voice signature. It's very flexible. You can do a level benefit or it could be a complete guaranteed issue. Wow. That's right. It can be a complete guaranteed issue product or a level benefit product, and that is Great Western. So their level product is called an Assurance Plus. They're guaranteed issued called Guaranteed Assurance. If the unique thing about this is you apply for the Guaranteed Assurance, which is no health questions, doesn't matter. And if they are approved for the Assurance Plus, meaning they can answer no to just 3 health questions that we'll get in here into a minute, then they actually get a bonus on their face amount. So they get 125% more coverage for the same exact price if they're approved for that level benefit. So for example, if you get them approved for a $10,000 plan, they'll get $12,500. If you write them an $8,000 plan, they'll get $10,000 if they're approved for the Assurance Plus. You can have up to $40,000 of face amount, but I'll tell you what's more unique on this, Austin, is it goes down to $1,000. So when you're looking at guaranteed issue product anywhere in the industry, to find one that goes that low is really surprising, and it's really good because sometimes you have clients that are in bad health, that are higher in age, and they can't afford a minimum of $5,000 with some carriers. Whenever we're looking at getting a client approved on this, what makes them unique is they have really all the options you need. They have a e-app through My Enroller, which is on the Great Western, it's on their portal. It's very simple. You can either do an emailed signature that is very fast and very quick. Simply, you click the email signature, it sends it over to the client. They open the email, click it, sign, it's done. Let's say your client doesn't have that ability, but your client needs to be in a guaranteed issue product. You can do a voice recorder app. So this is a phone interview with just you and the client. There's nobody else on the other end of the phone. So this is pretty cool. And it's kind of weird at first because you dial this phone number, you enter a 5-digit code that the e-app gives you, and it's an automatic recorded line. So I'm actually the interviewer for the next 2 minutes. And all those authorizations that I listen to all the time, Austin, for years of them, this is going to be recorded. This is the fraud statement. This is the MIB statement. This is the HIPAA authorization, blah, 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 blah. Like we hear those when we sleep. The first time I wrote this app on a voice recording, I was that person.
Flip the tables on them.
It
Do you
was
get
so
an extra
weird.
fee for being the interviewer there? Do they pay us the telephone interviewer fee?
I probably need to find out for that. But it was really unique because it was the first time I was ever reading this form, but it was as if I've read it 100 times. Because I do it exactly word for word that it was going to say. So that's pretty cool. So if they don't have internet capabilities, if they don't have email capabilities, you can simply click the voice record, dial the phone number, you'd read them the authorizations, and you tell them that they're going to sign with their voice, and boom, as soon as you click it, it automatically sends that and the app to the company, and you're completely done.
Now, can you do that after normal business hours?
Well, you can do that anytime you want to. That's the thing. As long as the interviewer / me is available, then I can do that process. And also, you can do the e-app e-signature process at any time as well, because there's no phone interview or call center you have to call in to complete that phone interview.
I mean, that's huge.
You can actually do that e-signature or the e-app process even if you don't have an internet connection. Because with My Enroller, you can actually enter and document in all of the information. And once you get back into internet service land and you upload and sync your system, it'll actually send everything out, and then your client gets the document then. So it's a lot of flexibility with this product. This one also starts at age 40, not 50, and goes up to age 80. So it does give a lot of flexibility. And that level benefit that Zach was talking about, there's 3 questions. Now there's multiple layers in each of those questions. So they do cover probably about like 6 questions on a normal e-app, but they're condensed into 3. And as long as you can answer no to those health questions, they can qualify for the level benefit. There is a caveat that a lot of people don't know about, and it's what's considered treatment, Zach, in that 3-year. There's a magical 3-year window there with Great Western that kind of gives them a little niche.
You're right. It's actually a 2-year window.
Is it 2 years? 2 years, that's right.
So if you're writing a guaranteed issue product, if you're just going to go with the straight guaranteed assurance here, you don't have to answer these 3 questions at all. You can just put a big line through it or just ignore it. It doesn't matter. But if you want the ability for your client to be able to go for a level, there's these 3 questions. There's 2 of them that are complete knockouts. And that is if they've had hospice, been in a hospital or a nursing home for 5 or more days recently. That's going to be a knockout. If they can't perform their activities of daily living, that's going to be a knockout. So you're just going right to the guaranteed issue product. But the third question is where it's unique because it mentions heart attack, cancer, stroke. It mentions all of those things that you normally would see. But it tells you at the bottom of that third question to do not mark yes if your client has been on the same medications with the same doses and has maintained it for more than 2 years. So back to your question, Roger, is if they're on medication for congestive heart failure and they've been on the same medicine and the same dosage for more than 2 years, Great Western views that is no longer as treatment for congestive heart failure. They're saying it's stable and it's maintaining because it's everything. They've worked it out and they found the magic potion that has got it under control, and they consider it as maintenance medication instead of treatment. So you're able to mark no to that. And as long as the other 2 questions are marked no, you can give somebody with AIDS, with congestive heart failure, with anything, pretty much anything, a level benefit.
Yeah, I mean, the application also says if your doctor's visits are just to see them as a checkup and he's not changing medications related to those impairments, you can also answer that question no.
Yep. So here's one thing that I don't want you guys to do listening to this is saying, oh, well, I'm going to apply for the level benefit through Great Western for every unhealthy client I possibly come across.
No.
Okay. because like you're like I want to stress this, you still have to do your underwriting because they can't change blood pressure brands. That's gonna throw a flag. They can't change insulin brands. They can't increase the dosage on the same medicine they've been on for 15 years by 10 milligrams.
They can reduce. They can
increase. Reduce all they want, but they can't change brands or increase dosages of that. So that's the important thing. And most clients, off the top of their head, they probably don't know in the past 2 years if their medication has increased or not. So you really need to dive in and look. But you also need to make sure that if you are applying for this benefit, that they are comfortable and they understand what their policy would be as the guaranteed issue, even if they don't get approved for that level.
What else is a knockout, or what else do they cover?
I mean, that's it. Like, it doesn't have a huge underwriting profile because pretty much you name it. If they've maintained everything the same for the past 2 years, they'll be approved. Is outside of activities of daily living, like I said, been in hospital, nursing home, or anything for like 5 or more days. Like outside of those initial 2 knockout questions, and you can see that on the form if you get on their website. That I'm sure we'll have that virtual packet there for you. But you can see those health questions. But that's what makes them really unique, Austin. And another little tidbit here that probably will make people excited. One, they accept any credit card, including Direct Express, debit card, any bank account, which is very flexible. And also, they're the only guaranteed issue product that pays renewals to agents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they have a favorable chargeback policy too. They will advance up to 6 months. You can do as earned, depending on your organization that you're with, but they will advance up to 6 months. And they have normal chargeback policies. So for agents that are listening, if you don't know what that is, figure that out before you just start writing feverishly for like the lowest price carrier out there. Because some companies that are in that guaranteed issue space, if there's a death claim in the first year, you get 100% chargeback. If there's a death claim in the second year, you get a 50% chargeback, even though you've been only paid as earned. With Great Western, they're a 6-month advance, 6 month as earned on the premiums and your commissions. So if your client lives to 9 months, there is no chargeback because they've received all the premiums that they were going to receive. So it's a standard chargeback process like any other carrier. It makes it good for the company, makes it good for the client, makes it good for the agent. That's the 3-tiered stool, or the 3-legged stool that we always use as a benchmark. The products that we write have to benefit 3 parties: the company, the client, and the agent. If they're only benefiting the company and the client and not the agent, it's going to hurt you. Don't write it. You have to win also. But it can't just be about you. So make it about the client and the company too. So it has to be that balance. I will say that as of the recording of this episode, they just announced this week that they're introducing a brand new final expense application that has streamlined those questions and a streamlined e-application process. They are going to be rolling that out. And effective as of November 1st of 2020, this coming fall, they will only be doing electronic applications, no longer any paper. So they're not going to be accepting any paper. They're going completely wireless, electronic, virtual. They're stepping into the 2020s.
Well, any other personal stories or anecdotes?
Mine is, I would say, to cover all the carriers we covered today, and I know we have a whole bag full of goodies here that we're going to be unraveling for people. But the biggest thing is these carriers keep things simple, they are flexible, and they're extremely competitive when it comes to commissions, when it comes to prices for the clients, and like Roger said, for the carrier, for the company, and for the agent. They're excellent products. But when we're talking about transitioning and having tools for telesales, as you just remember, if you go back and listen to this and see some of the health impairments with just those 4 carriers we mentioned today, there's not one client that you cannot cover with just these 4. And this is not even half the ones that we're going to reveal to you guys. These are all the ones that you don't have to have any internet or any email to do. These are just the ones that are no email. And some people prefer that and other agents don't. I think we'll probably get into a little debate on plus and minuses probably in the next episode of e-apps versus phone apps versus email signatures versus voice signatures.
Yeah, and there's some good dialogue there for sure. So you got to tune in next week. We're going to be hitting some great companies and some great products that are done with an e-application process as opposed to voice signature. So it's going to be, we've got 2 weeks here back to back with some great stuff and great tools that we can get out to you. I will say in closing here, just with all of these carriers, they have great sales desks that you can reach out to for help. They have underwriting support that you can reach out to for risk assessment and help. I know I've spoken to all of them. Great Western in particular, the one we just wrapped up with. You can call and talk to them about your situation. They're very friendly. They'll work with you if there's something that you need to get done. When I say work with you, I mean work with you to help you understand the process and how to get your business placed correctly. They are available and accessible, and that's super important when it comes to simplicity and getting business done.
Awesome, guys. Well, we're going to wrap today's episode there, but make sure to come back next week as we cover 4 more great carrier options for telesales. Now, in the meantime, if you would like some of the resources we discussed today, such as the underwriting guide / cheat sheet, or if you need a contract for one of these carriers so you can serve more clients via the phone, fill out the form on the show notes page at liapodcast.org/EP16. That's liapodcast.org/EP16. Again, thank you so much for listening to the Life Insurance Academy podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening, give us a 5-star rating, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Life Insurer Acad. We're also now on YouTube, so you can listen while you're at your computer or while you're killing some stay-at-home time. Once you're done calling for the day, just search Life Insurance Academy or visit our website for the link. The Life Insurance Academy podcast is produced and mixed by me, Austin Lopes-Severo. Our theme song is by Flashing Lights. We'll see you on next week's part 2 of our telesales carrier discussion. Until then, stay healthy and go be a difference maker.